ending our contract with the low-tier subcontractor. Actually, I've been looking for a place that would sell us a cheaper system for a while now. From now on, we'll be working with them. What? You can't just say that out of the blue. Companies and men need to be big to matter. To the second-generation CEO, David, the bigger the company in terms of employee numbers and size, the better. It seems our small company with only a few dozen employees doesn't make the cut. Terminating the contract means you won't be able to use our system at all anymore. We will never do business with your company again. Are you sure about this? Of course. Just like that, our business with Bright Bread Corp ended abruptly. 1 week later, my phone rings. Surprisingly, it's David, the nostalgic figure. "Mike, help me. Something terrible has happened." I let out a deep sigh and listened. It seems I was seriously underestimated because of my appearance. I think it's okay to be indifferent to someone from a company we've already ended business with. What matters more than the past is always the future. My name is Mike Roberts, 40 years old. I'm an engineer at a software company called TechForge. Everyone at the company acknowledges my competence. I work diligently in such an environment day and night. Now, I may be praised by others, but the path to get here was not easy. Actually, I've been short since I was young. Not just below average, but significantly short. I barely make 5'3" when rounding up from a decimal point. On top of that, I have a baby face, so people always underestimate me when we first meet. During my school days, I was often harassed by rough kids, and I had countless unpleasant experiences during part-time jobs and job interviews. Even so, I was fortunate enough to get a job offer from my current company, and I made a decision. I couldn't grow taller at this point. However, people say that appearance accounts for 90% of first impressions, so my height was inevitably a disadvantage. That said, first impressions don't determine everything about a person. So, I decided to compensate for what I lacked in other ways. I majored in humanities, but after receiving the job offer, I started studying intensively. After joining the company, I proactively asked questions and sought guidance from various people. As a result, my skills as an engineer improved rapidly. Eventually, I became known as the best engineer in the company, and my life finally reached a place where I could stand in the sunlight. In my hometown, there was a famous bakery I frequented as a child. So, I was acquainted with Michael Williams, the CEO of Bright Bread Corporation, which ran the bakery. Michael was a craftsman who created hit products one after another, quickly turning a small-town bakery into the top bakery in the area. His son, David, who recently became the second-generation CEO, further grew it into the bakery with the most stores in the state. I had seen David a few times in the store when I went to buy bread as a child. Today was my first business meeting with him. I only had memories of David from his childhood, so I was pleasantly surprised to see him now, standing over 6 feet tall and with model-like good looks. "Wow, you're short. How tall are you?" "Shorter than those celebrities who are famous for being short." Usually, when people say short, they mean just a little below average. But this is like a joke. You don't know the struggle of bumping your head on the train, do you? It's quite a hassle. Well, you wouldn't understand that. I was shocked in a different way this time. I found myself clenching my fists tightly. How many times did he use the words small or short in just one sentence? It's not like those words are forbidden for me, but they reminded me of the struggles I had with my height during my adolescence, so they were never pleasant to hear. Generally speaking, height can be a sensitive topic when someone is either too tall or too short. However, David seemed to lack that awareness. I was internally disappointed. The first CEO, Michael, was a man of few words and not very sociable, but he was sincere. The reason I got involved with Bright Bread as an engineer rather than just a customer was because of Michael. One time, when I visited the bakery while visiting my parents' house, Michael asked for my advice. "Our system manager and I have been discussing it, but could you create a new register system for us?" "What, me? You became an engineer, right?" You were always diligent as a child, Mike. I'm sure you can create something great. When I listened to him, he told me he wanted a register that could automatically recognize images of bread, calculate the price, and display it. It seemed difficult at first, but after much trial and error, I managed to complete it. This system played a part in the growth of the store. Even after the number of stores increased, this register was used in all locations, and I started working with David, who had become the new CEO, for maintenance and support. Therefore, he shouldn't treat me poorly. But still, you know they say appearance is 90% of a first impression, right? Even if you don't have the substance, you should at least wear platform shoes or something to make a better impression. My dad's so old-fashioned. He shouldn't have hired a rat like you just because you're an old acquaintance. Maybe because he's tall. David's criticism of my height never stopped. In business, you have to get along with people you don't like. But that's undeniably a stressful act. Now, every time I meet David, I feel like I'm testing the limits of my patience. Maintenance fees and update charges, aren't they always high? The only thing that should be high is my height. David kept shifting his legs every time he spoke. Was he trying to emphasize their length? Or did he think the act of crossing his legs looked cool? In any case, he was clearly full of himself. Despite this, he's still a client. I had to appease him without upsetting him. Just as a handsome guy like you needs long legs, a good product comes with an appropriate price. However, my worries were completely unnecessary. David's cheeks turned red with pleasure as he leaned forward, hanging on my every word. Exactly, there's a proper value for everything. For a good-looking guy like me, it's natural to have height and long legs. Wow, you get it more than I thought. I misjudged you. Even a worm will turn, as they say. Sorry. I had plenty of things I wanted to say, like how no one in their 40s says sorry, or how comparing me to a worm is inappropriate since I'm 2 years older than him. But this was a business meeting. I had to keep telling myself that I was the older one here. I bit down hard and held it in. But you know, unlike me, this system's price isn't what I'd call reasonable. It's too expensive. That's not true. The accuracy of the image recognition and the speed of processing are top-notch. You won't find many products at this level. Really? Your company is a subcontractor, right? I heard it's common in the IT industry to have third or fourth tier subcontractors. Your company is small, so it's at the very bottom, right? And among those bottom tier companies, you're just a low-level employee. There's no way I can trust what a loser like you says. I was at a loss for words at his harsh comments. It's true that Techforge is a small software company, but we are relied upon by various businesses, and Bright Bread was just one of our many clients. Even as a subcontractor, our dealings with Bright Bread Corporation were as a second-tier subcontractor. It's truly insulting to be dismissed as a third or fourth-tier company just because we have fewer employees. Moreover, the reason I remain a regular employee in my 40s is because I enjoy development too much to be interested in management. I've been offered management positions, and it's a well-known fact within the company, so no one underestimates me for not having a managerial title. I repeatedly explained the reliability of our product, but David just let my words go in one ear and out the other, insisting that the price and functionality were unbalanced. Eventually, perhaps tired of arguing, he let out a big sigh and clapped his hands together. All right, I've decided. We're canceling the contract with the low-tier subcontractor. Actually, I've been looking for a place that would sell us a cheaper system for a while now. I had my eye on one, but out of respect for my dad, I couldn't cut ties easily. But now I've made up my mind. From now on, we'll be working with them. What? You can't just say that out of the blue. I looked at the brochure from our rival company that David handed me. It was a larger company than Techforge, although it was still a small to medium-sized enterprise with fewer than 300 employees. It was much bigger than our company, which operates with only a few dozen people. But so what? They're buying the product, not the company size. Techforge is a small, elite team. I'm confident that our technology is on par with any large corporation. Mr. Williams, please don't be swayed by short-term gains. Our system may not be cheap, but it's worth every penny. It's hard to be convinced by a small man from a small company. Companies and men need to be big to matter. Do you know how many stores have expanded since I became CEO? A capable man like me has chosen another company. Just accept it without jealousy. It seemed he was unwilling to let go of his belief that bigger was better. I don't completely deny that perspective, but I still think David doesn't understand. Small entities have their own ways of competing. Understood. However, terminating the contracts means you won't be able to use our system anymore. Additionally, considering this unilateral termination, we will never do business with your company again. Are you sure about this? Of course. I'll become even bigger with a bigger company's bigger product than Techforge's. Then please sign the documents to officially end the contract. And so, our business with Bright Bread Corporation came to an abrupt end. Thinking of Michael, I felt frustration and sadness. But with things having been said the way they were, it would be difficult to maintain a good relationship. I set aside my regrets and initialized the systems for all the stores. A week later, I had moved on and was focused on other work. I was busy developing a new app. I was confident that once it was completed, the client would be pleased. I was so focused that I didn't even notice my phone ringing. Someone else pointed it out to me, and I quickly answered it. To my surprise, it was David, the familiar voice from the past. Mike, help me. Something terrible has happened. I thought our business relationship was over. You didn't trust the capabilities of a small company like Techforge, right? I'm also currently busy with a significant task, so I must decline your request. Don't be so petty. If something happens to our bakery, wouldn't you, as a longtime customer, feel awkward too? The truth is, the new register system is unusable. We're in big trouble. I let out a deep sigh and listened. Apparently, the new system had serious issues with its image recognition accuracy. If the bread on the tray wasn't spaced apart significantly, it would frequently miscalculate the total. As a result, instead of saving time, the staff ended up having to manually calculate the prices, taking even longer. Complaints were also coming in from customers because of this. Maybe it's interpreting things in a big way in keeping with your theme? No one asked for witty remarks. Why is this happening? I was so excited about this big contract. Take this seriously. Please don't be unreasonable. It's not easy to diagnose the issue just by talking on the phone. Moreover, you should discuss this with the developers of the current system, not me. I was responsible for the previous system, so I don't know how the new one works. Wait, are you saying the old system was entirely your creation? I thought our system department made it, and you just helped a bit. David suddenly started mumbling in a low voice. It seems I was severely underestimated due to my appearance. Does he have any idea how much effort I put in to reach this level of knowledge and skill? I felt like throwing in a snide remark. The system I developed was excellent, wasn't it? While it wasn't 100% perfect, it was quite accurate unless similar-looking breads were stacked together. In fact, there were hardly any complaints about billing before. Mr. Williams even mentioned that customers praised the convenience of the register. Damn, why is this happening? We went with a bigger company's product. The quality of a product isn't determined by the size of the company. Also, if the price is lower, the functionality is often compromised. Do you now understand that our system's price was fair? David fell silent. He seemed unwilling to admit that a product from a small company like ours could be superior. I sighed again and decided to change the subject. Persisting any further is not a desirable approach for a professional. Besides, David probably hasn't even gotten to the main point yet. So, did you call just to complain about the current system to me, who didn't even develop it? Well, that doesn't add up, does it? The real reason you called is that you want to use our system again, isn't it? It seems you finally realized the value of our product. I smirked and spoke in a slightly teasing tone. Normally, bringing emotions into business is taboo. But after being treated so harshly and seeing him trying to change his stance so easily, I figured it was okay to push back a little. Sure enough, David quickly lost his temper. "Don't be ridiculous. No way. I'm a bigger man than you. I'm not going to kneel down to a company I once terminated a contract with. I'll never use your company's products again. I only called you because I pitied you for being idle. Goodbye." David ranted and then abruptly hung up. I couldn't help but laugh at how easily he lost his temper. What an easy man to handle. I put down the phone and went back to my work. I figured that was enough interaction with someone from a company we were no longer doing business with. What's always more important than the past is the future. I needed to finish my current project. 3 months later, the project I had been focusing on was nearing completion. Despite the ongoing overtime, which must have been taking a toll on my body, I was feeling excited as the product neared its final stages. Just then, my phone rang again. This time it was Michael. "Hey Mike, how have you been? You're not still working late like you did when you were younger, are you? Once you're past 40, your body can give out suddenly. Don't overdo it. Mr. Williams, have you been spying on me? That's quite scary. I'll make sure to take proper breaks once I finish this project. By the way, did you call about the old register system? How is David handling things now?" "Well, we paid a lot of money to introduce another big company's system." "What, in such a short time?" My voice cracked in surprise. He did say the system was useless, but constantly changing systems would only confuse the staff. Even though they are all register systems, each one has slightly different specifications. In fact, the similarity might cause even more mistakes. It seems my son is desperate. The new register system has improved accuracy, but it has many unnecessary features for us. It still doesn't match up to the system you created. Our system manager said your system had just the right amount of features for our needs, and the price was justified. I can't understand why my son decided to let it go. I'm grateful to hear you say that, Mr. Williams. It was worth creating. I continued to make improvements and provide maintenance to ensure it would be used for a long time, but I'm sorry I couldn't do more. You did your best. To be honest, our store's profits are dropping. The high system usage fees are part of the problem, but our staff also can't keep up with the frequent system changes, leading to customer dissatisfaction. If this continues, some stores might have to close. That's unfortunate. The business had grown so much. I genuinely felt this way. I had known the store since I was a child, and on a personal level, I wanted it to continue thriving. However, as long as David kept being stubborn, it would be difficult. "Mike, this situation was caused by my son. You don't need to worry about it. Also, I didn't call to make you feel guilty. I actually have a favor to ask." I listened to Mr. Williams' details and agreed immediately. 6 months later, I was doing a final check on the materials for a business meeting scheduled for that day. Then, there was some commotion at the reception desk. Rushing over, I found David, his face red with anger, shouting loudly. I quickly ushered him into the conference room, where he began shouting and spitting as soon as he got inside. "Hey, Shorty, what the hell are you playing at, you idiot? David, long time no see. What brings you to a company you swore you'd never deal with again? Why did you let my dad use the old register system? We agreed to stop doing business." "That's right, we no longer do business with Bright Bread. But Mr. Williams is different. He went independent. The truth is, after handing over the CEO position to David, Mr. Williams had a dream he wanted to fulfill: to own his own store again and bake bread to his heart's content. Being a craftsman at heart, he hadn't expected the store to become so successful. As the business grew, he had less time to knead dough himself, spending more time managing people in the business. The day he stepped down as CEO, he secretly planned to open his own store. Naturally, given his age, he wanted to simplify everything but baking. Hence, he had called me to ask about using the old register system from Bright Bread. That's a lame excuse. Customers complained, asking why we're not using the same register system as the other store. That's not my concern. I simply responded to Mr. Williams' request. Besides, didn't you sign the contract termination papers? There's no going back now. Sure, I signed it, but I didn't say I'd never use it again. Even if my dad went independent, he was originally Brightbread's CEO. It's practically a related company. If my dad can use it, so should I. And don't act so petty, that's why you never grew tall. This is such a forced argument. My height has a lot to do with genetics. I wish he'd stop blaming everything on my height. Moreover, if he wants to use our system, he should be asking politely, not acting so arrogantly. Just because the owner is family doesn't make it the same company. There's no formal business relationship. Besides, if you wanted to use our system, you should have said so during our last call. I asked, didn't I? If you had been honest then, I might have considered it. The more you procrastinate with difficult matters, the worse the results usually are. Shut up. Don't lecture me. You're just a shorty. I couldn't be honest on the phone because you were being so snide. This is all your fault. Just give me the register system. That'll fix the sales slump immediately. No, that's impossible. The data has been reset. The system improves its accuracy the more it scans the bread. Even if you use the software now, you'd have to start by relearning the data, so it can't be used right away. Besides, the sales slump isn't just because of the register, is it? David's face twitched. Indeed, big was David's favorite word, and he had significantly expanded the number of Brightbread stores. However, his skills as a baker were far inferior to Mr. Williams. As a result, when Mr. Williams went independent, sales of new products plummeted. While David could replicate existing products, he struggled with the creativity needed to develop new ones. He shook his fist in rage and threw a pen he had in his pocket at me. You're useless. When I tell you to do something, you do it immediately. This is why short people are worthless. You should be more accommodating to me. Otherwise, I'll never catch up to my dad. He's always been a thorn in my side. No matter how hard I try, no one ever acknowledges me the way they do him. But I did expand the number of stores. That's my achievement, and I must maintain it. Good grief. You really are hopeless. Dad, what are you doing here? Suddenly, Mr. Williams entered the conference room, causing David to turn around in shock. The truth is, Mr. Williams was the person I had a meeting with that day. He must have rushed here after hearing about David's arrival from the receptionist. He was slightly out of breath. David, it's true that you may not have matched my skills in creating new breads, but your management skills were a great help. I couldn't have done it alone. That's why I believed you'd manage well, with the support of our employees and people like Mike. But it seems I was mistaken. That's not fair. I've worked hard, trying to follow in your footsteps. I'm the next best at baking after you. I've analyzed data on store locations, customer demographics, and thought hard about how to increase sales. And yet, you're abandoning me? I'm not abandoning you. You've already become independent long ago. I can't help you anymore. Why do you underestimate Mike? Even though I don't know much about systems, I can tell he's competent. He listens to our needs sincerely and tries to meet them at the lowest cost. Even today, he's here to offer a new system. What is this? At Mr. Williams' prompting, I briefly introduced the new product to David as well. It's an app for pre-ordering bread via smartphone. Given Mr. Williams' age, he can't work as intensely as he used to. Despite that, he wanted to deliver delicious, freshly baked bread to a wide range of ages without overexerting himself, which is why he requested the development of this app. Not only does this app handle reservations, but it also processes payments. That was my suggestion. There's no initial cost, just a monthly fee of around $100. Pre-ordering bread. That's brilliant. It means even people who work late won't have to worry about sold-out items. Those who come early in the morning can just pick up their orders without having to pay at the counter, saving time. And it's affordable. I'd love to use it in our stores too. Unfortunately, that's not possible. You said we would never do business again, didn't you? You mentioned that during our last call. A CEO going back on his word isn't a good look. I never said that. You must be remembering wrong, Mike. I smiled warmly at David, who was shaking his head vigorously with his hands stretched out in front of him. Keeping my smile, I held up my phone and played back the recording. I'd never kneel down to a company I terminated a contract with. I'll never use your company's products again. David's slightly high-pitched voice echoed throughout the room. His face turned pale, and Mr. Williams shot him a cold glance. David, as I've always told you since you were a child, you must take responsibility for your words. Especially now that you're an adult, it's childish to argue about what you did or didn't say. Accept the reality gracefully, unless you want to embarrass yourself further. Wait, Dad. What will happen to Bright Bread at this rate? It's the company you built. If it collapses, that's fate. I entrusted it to you, knowing that might happen. I'm not going to say anything now. A business leader needs decisiveness. Besides, even if it's not with Bright Bread, I can still bake bread. My nephew, who's been helping me, has real potential. I'll keep teaching him my skills and manage on a smaller scale. You take care of yourself and do your best. Goodbye. No, wait. Mr. Williams pushed David out of the conference room and locked the door. For a while, there were sounds of banging on the door, but eventually it quieted down and the hallway became still. Sorry for the delay. Let's start our meeting. Yes. I quickly prepared the materials and began the presentation. Afterward, Bright Bread went bankrupt. Without Mr. Williams, the products became monotonous. Additionally, David continued using the expensive system, further straining the company's finances. Initially, only 1 or 2 small stores closed, but soon, multiple stores shut down rapidly. It didn't take long for all the stores to close. David, having lost his place of work, went to Mr. Williams, pleading for help with tears in his eyes. However, Mr. Williams didn't take him in. One reason was that he had already taken his nephew as an apprentice. Another reason was that he believed David needed to sincerely reflect on his actions. Having been turned away, David tried to open his own bakery. Then, showing how shameless he could be, he contacted me. Let me use the register system. I'll consider it once your store is up and running. Honestly, I didn't think he would succeed, so I kept my response vague. And my prediction was right. David's new bakery barely had any customers. I checked it out from a distance once. The shop was small but located in a high-traffic area. Despite his business acumen and sufficient advertising, the variety of bread seemed limited. Yet, David didn't give up and called me again. Let me use the bread reservation app my dad's using. I'll consider it once your business stabilizes. It's cheaper than the register system, right? I can afford that. Stop being so stingy and let me have it. It's that attitude that's the problem. You need to learn a bit. Ultimately, his bakery failed, leaving him with nothing but debt from the startup. Having become unemployed again and burdened with debt, David was divorced by his wife and separated from his 2 children. Staying in the same town meant everyone knew about his failed business, and people still looked up to Mr. Williams. No bakery would hire him. Even after all this, David didn't seem to reflect on his actions. One day, a letter arrived at Techverge addressed to me. For a moment, I thought it might be an apology, but it was filled with curses and incoherent, spiteful words. I immediately took a photo and sent it to Mr. Williams, who later gave David a stern reprimand. Eventually, David left town and worked tirelessly to repay his debts. Meanwhile, I found a new joy in visiting Mr. Williams' new store every time I returned to my hometown. Of course, I used the reservation app I developed. Mr. Williams is getting on in years, so it's uncertain how long he'll be able to work. Fortunately, his nephew, who became his apprentice, seems quite skilled according to Mr. Williams. Half of the new creations in the bakery are his nephew's, and they're well received. I'd like to keep enjoying your bread for as long as possible, Mr. Williams. That's wonderful to hear. I'd like to stay active for as long as I can too. then I'll continue to support you with the system to make that time longer. I'm counting on you. My parents are also getting older, and we've started talking about finding a care facility for them. Ideally, it will be somewhere convenient for me to visit frequently. If that happens, I won't be able to visit the bakery as often. Maybe I'll build an online ordering system for the bakery next. I think, as I savor another piece of freshly baked bread.